So, you want to know my favorite Procreate brushes? Don't worry, I got you. Hey there, Nettie here. Welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. Okay, to be honest, no one particularly asked for this, but I thought it would be cool to make a video sharing all my favorite Procreate go-tos, from brushes, tools, and some special tips that have helped my workflow feel a lot more intuitive. That way, in the future, I can finally refer to this video when I'm asked, what brushes do you use? What software is that? What iPad are you using? How did you make that? How did you do that little thing with the box and the squares? I'm joking. And yes, if you've watched my last Procreate Brushes videos, I'm reusing the exact same joke. First off, the iPad that I use is the 2022, or is it 2023? I'm not sure. I got it this year, so I don't really know when it was made. But this is the iPad Pro, the one with the M2 chip, and it's a huge upgrade from my previous iPad, which was just like a regular 9.7-inch iPad. It wasn't even a Pro or Air or anything. But that iPad eventually crashed on me, probably because it could no longer handle all my large files. And my files weren't even that large, I kid you not. But with this baby, I can have pretty large files with no problem at all. So that's great, because I really struggled using my old iPad. Just in case you're wondering, I got my iPad case from Amazon and I'll have it linked in the description. The original case is actually a plain blush pink, and it doesn't come with any of these like details you see. I don't know if I can get that on camera. I did this myself using a Sakura gel roll pen just to like add a bit of like bedazzle and, you know, make it feel more detailed and fancy. And for the stickers, they're just a bunch of random stickers from different sticker packs I got on Stationery Pal, so I'll have that link below as well. Starting out with brushes. I've gathered a ton of brushes throughout the years, and to no surprise, I hardly use all of them except from occasionally experimenting with a few here and there. I'm sure you've probably heard the saying, the tools don't make the artist, and I personally 100% agree with this. But I will say, when it comes to brushes, especially digital brushes, finding a perfect brush that works exactly to your taste is definitely an amazing feeling and truly makes the entire process a lot easier. In this section, I've compiled a list of my personal favorite brushes, grouped into sketching, line work, painting, blending, and texture brushes. Let's start off with sketching. A lot of artists praise the default brushes that come with Procreate, and I definitely see why. One of my favorite default brush is the 6B pencil, and you can find it in the sketching folder located in the brushes tab. I personally love that it has a textured appearance similar to traditional graphite pencils, and I mainly use it when I'm randomly sketching or when I want to be a lot more loose and messy with my lines. I also have a scaled up version that I use as a texture brush. One thing I love about digital brushes is how you can tweak it and repurpose it in a different way, like in this example where I use the scaled up version to give the hair that 4C like texture. I'm thinking of making a more detailed video on how I choose brushes to achieve certain textures, materials, or effects in my work. It's honestly surprising how a few strokes of using the right brush can make a huge difference. Let me know in the comments if you'll be interested in seeing that. The second brush, and one of my absolute favorites, is from a JINGSKETCH brush pack. I've been using JINGSKETCH brushes in almost all my art since 2020, and you'll see that most of my go-to brushes come from this pack. But my favorite out of all of them has to be Sharp Render. It's extremely versatile and is what I use for 90% of all my artworks, be it to sketch or even paint. This is my go-to brush that I reach for anytime I open a new canvas. I'm personally in love with the texture and the way it feels kind of like a flat blunt pencil, but I can also achieve a final look when I scale it down. All in all, I'm a huge fan of JINGSKETCH brushes, and I'll have a link in the description so you can get them if you like, while also supporting a fellow artist. Installing brushes to Procreate is pretty easy. Just simply tap on the plus button to create a new brush. Find and tap the import button at the top right to import the brushes from your Files app, and the brush will automatically appear in the imported folder. You can also directly import it from your Files app by clicking Share and Send to Procreate, or simply drag and drop into Procreate using split screen. For line work, I have two main brushes that I always use when I want to achieve that clean, crisp line art look. The main brush I use is JINGSKETCH, which is also by JINGSKETCH. In the past, I used this brush for sketching as it's originally made for, but I found that it was a bit too clean and tight for my sketches, and I preferred how it looked when used more like an ink pen or fine liner. I love how I can easily control the line weight, making it perfect to use for more polished, clean line art. The second brush is the default monoline brush on Procreate. I tweaked it a bit and adjusted the size and streamline. Apparently, it's originally meant for calligraphy, but I personally love using it for more stylized and graphical work, or more recently for production line art due to its hard edge and even line weights. I really want to experiment with more ink-like line art, so I'm looking into purchasing this brush pack by Lane Brown in the future. If any of you have experience with this pack, do share your reviews in the comments. I would love to know. There are multiple steps in the painting process, from blocking large shapes, blending, adding textures, and in general, the brushes I use to paint change depending on the style and look I'm trying to achieve. But I do have a few brushes that I reach for more often. Starting simple, we have the default round and round soft airbrush. As basic as they may seem, these brushes can be very versatile and are great for creating smooth and blended effects as well, allowing you to easily build up layers of color and texture, which is perfect for digital painting. I use the round brush mainly when I block in large areas of color or when I want a more graphic read. As for the soft airbrush, I mainly use it for adding ambient occlusions and gradients to my work. It's also very useful for blending, but be careful because if you don't use it right, you might end up making your work seem flat or overly polished, which isn't always the most appealing. I also recently started using this brush from Sam's Basic Brush Pack. Unlike the round brush, this one has a square shape and feels a lot more like an alcohol-based marker. It's very buttery and all in all feels great to paint with. I personally love the translucent effect of this brush and it's absolutely perfect for layering. In fact, it's been my go-to painting brush for the past few months. I got this from a friend of mine and apparently the brush pack is actually for Photoshop, and unfortunately you can only get it from his digital art course, so I'll link it below if you're interested. For more texture in my paintings, I usually use the bamboo chalk brush, although it's a lot more grainy and rough, so I don't actually paint with it, but it's perfect for adding texture and noise to my work. Lastly, we have this unnamed blending brush, and I'm going to apologize now by saying I have zero idea where I actually got this brush from. It's my default brush I use to blend and I use it in almost 90% of all my artwork. It has this unique shape that makes it look like hair from an actual brush pack where you blend with it, which makes me think it was originally made to be a hairbrush, and I somehow downloaded it and accidentally changed the name because I felt it was better for blending, and now I can't trace it back to the original source because it doesn't come with a signature. Whoops. Anyway, I love this brush, and if by some miracle you recognize it, please let me know so I can give proper credits. When it comes to brushes, I like to mention that I do use brushes for multiple different purposes depending on the mood I'm in or the look I'm trying to achieve. I know it's fun to collect different brushes, but brushes aren't always the answer to making good art, and at the end of the day, a good artist is able to make any brush work in their favor. Now let's move on to tools. One major thing I like about Procreate is how intuitive it is. Everything is tucked away, but still pretty accessible, and yet nothing feels overwhelming. One of my personal favorites is Liquify. At first, I thought it was only used to create swirly effects, but to be honest, I never once used it for that. I personally use Liquify as a way to fix my proportions, and I noticed a lot of professional artists do the same. It's perfect especially for paintings when you need to adjust parts that feel off but don't want to mess up the entire thing. You can simply select the part you want to fix, and it only affects everything within the selection. By the way, you can do this with multiple layers selected as well, which I think is pretty cool. The warp tool is quite similar to Liquify in the sense that I also use it to adjust proportion, but I mainly use it when I'm trying to warp things into perspective or around the form. I also recently found out about Puppet Warp, which has more nodes to let you make more precise adjustments, which I think is pretty neat. I know a lot of people use the reference tool as a second window for their mood board, but I personally fell in love with using it as a canvas reference, and now I honestly cannot work without having this on. I'm sure I'm not the only one who sometimes struggle with working way too zoomed in the canvas that I end up getting lost in the little details. The reference tool has been a lifesaver for that problem. It's extremely convenient being able to look at the side and see a bigger picture of what I'm working on without having to constantly zoom in and out. Now, the clone tool is one that I don't hear people talk about as often, but I find it very helpful. It's perfect for quickly replicating parts of your work that's probably unnecessary to draw over and over again. I use this tool a lot when I'm concepting, creating patterns, or painting details on a character's outfits. I find it so much easier than duplicating the layer or redrawing it over and over. But if you're trying to clone individual elements, make sure to avoid overlapping them. This way you can easily edit and make adjustments. When it comes to Procreate tips, I'm well aware there are a ton out there, and you might already be aware of some of these, but I've decided to include them regardless since they've improved my workflow tremendously and might be helpful to someone out there. For starters, one of my favorite features is using gesture controls to activate quick menu, and when I touch and swipe to any direction, it acts as a shortcut, which is extremely helpful. I have mine set to flip horizontally to the left and flip vertically to the top. This way I can easily flip my canvas without having to go into the menu tab, and it's been a life changer. I even showed it to my classmate and she quickly said it's become second nature. I have the bottom one set to previous color, and this is very helpful when I'm painting and I need to switch back to the previous color after I color pick. If you don't have quick menu set up yet, I promise you, you're missing out on saving so much time in your workflow. The next few tips are very helpful for layer organization, especially if you don't want to be flooded with multiple layers. The first one is using the saved selection features as masks. Rather than making multiple layers over and over, I simply select a part of the piece I want to mask and save it as a saved selection. That way, anytime I want to make adjustments to that part, I don't have to reselect it, but simply reference the saved selection. And lastly, this is for anyone like me who does not enjoy working from grayscale to color, but would also love to see their artwork in grayscale to cross-check their values. For all my illustrations, I create a new layer called Value Check, fill it in with black, and set the blend mode to color. This way, I can simply toggle on and off the layer to see my work in grayscale and cross-check my values. And that's about it. Hopefully this video was informative enough. As I mentioned, my process is very chaotic, but these are definitely my go-tos that I use 90% of the time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope it was helpful or at least entertaining in some way. If you have any Procreate tips, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!